My name is Seraphine Cade, 29 years old from Boise, Idaho. What if the people who raised you, who were supposed to protect you, were the very ones who destroyed you? I returned to my childhood home in Boise after 14 years, not for closure, but for revenge. What I uncovered buried in that house was darker than I ever imagined. This isn't just a story about trauma, it's about betrayal, survival, and the day I took my voice back. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more powerful true story narrations. And as you listen, think about this. What would you do if the people you trusted most were the ones who broke you? Sometimes, going home isn't healing, it's war. I hadn't seen the Cade farmhouse in over 11 years, but the moment the Greyhound pulled off the dusty highway, I knew nothing had changed. The porch still leaned to the left like it was tired of standing. The windmill creaked lazily in the July heat. And the air smelled like it always did out here in rural Boise: pine, dry grass, and secrets. I stepped off the bus with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and a fire in my chest I'd been stoking since I was 15. Welcome home, Seraphine, I muttered to myself. Let's finish what they started. 3 days earlier, I was living quietly in Portland, managing a used bookstore and minding my own trauma. I had done everything right to forget Idaho. Changed my name to Sarah Jones. Saw a therapist. Built a life out of the rubble they left me with. Then Micah called. Hey, Sarah, he'd said, his voice tight, nervous. I know it's been a long time, but I think you should come home. Something's wrong with Mom. Wrong with Claudia Cade. That phrase almost made me laugh. Something had always been wrong with her. How do you diagnose someone who smiles while they're breaking you? She keeps saying your name, he continued. Swears she sees you in the house. Even talks to you. It's like she's losing it. I nearly hung up. But then he said something that gave me pause. She said she was sorry. About the things she did. Said she should have let you go. What does that mean? I didn't answer him. Because I knew exactly what it meant. That call didn't feel like an invitation, it felt like a trigger. Micah, for all his college degrees and suburban blindness, still didn't see what she really was. Or what Harris, our father, had done behind closed doors. He left for college when I needed him most. I was locked in Reedsvale before he even realized I was gone. I didn't tell him the real reason I was coming. I booked my ticket that night. Not for comfort. Not for forgiveness. But because Claudia Cade was unraveling, and I wanted to be there to watch every thread come loose. As the taxi rolled past long-forgotten roads and fields of browning hay, I spotted familiar markers: Mrs. Hallberg's red barn, the rusted train tracks, the weeping willow that had once been my hiding place, and finally, the Cade house. White paint peeled like scabs on its surface. The swing on the porch moved slightly in the wind, though no one was sitting there. Micah stepped onto the porch when he saw me. He smiled, hesitant, hopeful. Sarah. I stood there, watching him, the sun at my back and my childhood rising in my throat like bile. You called me, I said quietly. So here I am. But I wasn't the little sister he remembered. I was the storm they raised, and I was here to tear the silence apart. Crossing the threshold of the Cade farmhouse was like stepping into a mausoleum that still breathed. The floorboards groaned beneath my boots, just like they had when I was a girl sneaking down the stairs for water. The wallpaper was the same faded rose pattern, now curling at the edges like it wanted to peel away from the walls and escape. Even the smell hadn't changed: lavender-scented furniture polish mixed with old paper and something sour underneath. Memory hit me like a fist. Micah stepped in behind me and closed the door, too softly. Like he was afraid it would shatter. She's mostly in the back bedroom now, he said. Hasn't gone upstairs in months. She talks to herself sometimes. About Dad. About you. Some days she doesn't even know I'm here. I didn't ask if he believed she was faking it. I could already tell he didn't want to believe anything at all. We passed the living room, and I froze. The piano still stood in the corner, untouched, dust collecting on the keys like fallen ash. That piano had teeth when I was a child, Claudia made me practice scales until my knuckles bruised. I'd told her once I hated music. She smiled and made me play an hour longer. Nothing's changed, I said quietly. Micah rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, well. She hasn't really let me move anything. I raised an eyebrow. She let you live here. That's already more than I got. He didn't answer. Just led me down the hallway toward the back. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I could hear her murmuring to herself inside. I pushed the door open and stepped in. Claudia Cade lay propped against a mountain of pillows. Her once perfect hair now limp and streaked with gray. Her eyes fluttered toward me and widened. You, she whispered. No. You're not real. You're gone. I stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. Wishful thinking. She shrank slightly into the sheets, clutching a small cross that hung around her neck. This isn't happening. I buried you. I made peace. Micah rushed in behind me. Mom, it's okay. It's just Sarah. She's here. She's really here. Claudia stared past him, trembling. She came back. But why? I didn't answer. Not yet. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the one that used to be mine. I ran my fingers over the old quilt, same pattern, same texture. My childhood was still buried here, stitched into every corner. Micah knocked on the door. You okay? I looked at him for a long moment before nodding. Sure. But inside, I felt the ground shifting. Something was wrong in this house, beyond Claudia's sickness, beyond memory. There were things left behind here that refused to stay buried, and I'd come to dig every single one of them up. The next morning, I stood in Claudia's doorway, watching her breathe in shallow, wheezing bursts. Her skin looked thinner than parchment, stretched tight over her bones, her eyes darting beneath closed lids like she was watching something behind them. She stirred, then blinked awake. When she saw me, her mouth opened, but no sound came. Just a soft tremble, like a prayer gone wrong. I told them you weren't real, she whispered. You're the fever. The fever girl. I stepped closer, arms folded. No, Claudia. I'm the daughter you tried to erase. She let out a dry gasp. The basement. You should have stayed quiet. Micah walked in just then, holding a tray with oatmeal and a chipped mug of tea. She's confused again, he said, not looking at me. She didn't sleep much last night. Confused. Sure, that's what she told the doctors too, back when I cried about the bruises. About Harris locking me in the cellar for hours, sometimes overnight. About Claudia sitting at the kitchen table, humming hymns while I screamed into darkness. They said I had emotional dysregulation. That I was attention-seeking. So they sedated me. And when that didn't work, they sent me to Reedsvale Youth Behavioral Center, the place where they ship the problems families don't want. The pills they gave me there made my vision blur. I slept 14 hours a day and dreamed of burning the house down. I was 15, and the only person who came to visit was a social worker who told me to be grateful I had a home to go back to. I never did go back. Until now, that night, after Micah fell asleep on the couch with a half-empty beer in his hand, I walked the halls of the house barefoot. I moved the coat rack 6 inches to the left. Unplugged the nightlight in Claudia's room. Whispered her name just loud enough for her to stir. At 2 a.m., I turned on the gas stove in the kitchen just long enough for the scent to fill the air, then switched it off. Claudia called out faintly. Is someone there? I stood in the shadows and said nothing. She murmured something I couldn't quite catch, something about voices in the pipes and watchers in the walls. Then she started humming an old lullaby she used to play on the piano. The same one she forced me to practice until my fingers bled. Good. Let her remember. The next day, she refused to eat her breakfast. Said the tea was poisoned. That someone was moving her Bible. Micah dismissed it, said it was just the dementia. But I saw the look in his eyes, seeds of doubt, finally being planted. I smiled. She'd tried to erase me from this house, but now, I was everywhere. and I was just getting started. Micah stood in the doorway of the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes heavy with sleep and irritation. "You're messing with her, aren't you?" I looked up from the coffee I was pouring. "She's unraveling all by herself." "I'm just watching. She keeps saying you're moving things. Whispering at night." He frowned. "She says the house is haunted." I met his gaze, steady. "Maybe it is." He rubbed his temples and sat at the table. "She's sick, Sarah. Her mind's not what it used to be." "It never was," I said flatly. Micah sighed, the kind of sigh that says he's heard this before and doesn't want to hear it again. "Look, I know she was hard on you, hard." I slammed the mug down, coffee sloshing onto the counter. "She let him lock me in the cellar, Micah. 4 hours. Overnight. She told the school I was prone to fantasy when I came in with bruises." His expression darkened, but not with understanding, defensiveness. Dad was intense. He believed in discipline. He broke me. My voice was shaking now. "And you left me here with them." "I was a kid too," he snapped. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know." We stared at each other across the kitchen like strangers, not siblings. I saw the cracks forming behind his eyes. He didn't want to believe me. Because that meant facing the lie he'd been living his whole life. "She's dying," he said, softer now. "Can't we just let her go in peace?" I leaned forward. "She doesn't get peace. Not after what she did." He stood and walked out without another word. Later that day, while he drove into town for groceries, I went upstairs for the first time in years. My old bedroom door stuck like it remembered me. Inside, the room was practically frozen in time, yellowed posters on the wall, a twin bed with a worn blue comforter, and the small wooden dresser I used to hide my journal in, but the journal was gone. In its place, a stack of neatly labeled files sat in a locked metal box under the bed. I picked the lock with a hairpin, just like I used to. Inside were old report cards, drawings I made as a child, and a file marked Reedsvale, Seraphine Cade. My hands trembled as I opened it. Medication lists. Therapy notes. Doctor's summaries. All of them describing a girl who lied, who manipulated, who was unstable and unpredictable. All lies. Someone had carefully curated the story of a broken girl. Someone who wanted the world to think I was never telling the truth, and I had a feeling there was more, much more, hidden in this house. Micah wanted peace, but I wanted answers, and I was done pretending this place ever offered anything close to love. The attic was hotter than I remembered, dusty and choked with the scent of dry wood and insulation. Every creak beneath my feet echoed like a groan from the house itself, warning me to turn back. But I wouldn't. Not now. A sliver of memory had brought me here, me at 10 years old, hiding under a quilt during a thunderstorm while Harris yelled downstairs. I remembered him storming up here one night, dragging something heavy across the floor, muttering that no one needs to see this. That's when I started searching. I pushed past old boxes labeled Christmas and Micah's baby clothes, until my foot hit something hollow. I pulled back a dusty rug, revealing loose floorboards with faint scratches near the edges, like they'd been pried open before. Heart pounding, I wedged a screwdriver into the seam and lifted. There it was, a long, iron-reinforced chest, locked with a rusted padlock. My stomach twisted. It wasn't the kind of trunk you store decorations in. It was the kind you bury truth in. The lock gave after a few strikes with the claw end of a hammer. The lid creaked open slowly, like it hadn't seen light in decades. Inside were manila folders, worn VHS tapes labeled with dates and codes, and several legal documents stacked in meticulous order. I pulled the first file labeled Cade, Seraphine Clinical Protocol 0326B, and opened it. There were test results, dosage records, and pages of medical observations written in clinical coldness. Subject is showing elevated cortisol levels following administration. Memory disruption appears consistent with expected parameters. Parents report behavioral volatility post-trial, recommend sedative adjustment. I read and reread the pages, each sentence colder than the last. I wasn't a troubled child, I was a test subject. A consent form was tucked behind the file, signed in Harris's bold handwriting. Claudia's name was there too. They'd given permission, my own parents, to let some shadowy pharmaceutical company use me for drug trials under the guise of psychiatric care. And Reedsvale, it wasn't just where they sent me to be forgotten. It was where the experiments continued, away from prying eyes. The tapes were dated during my time there. My hand hovered over one labeled SC, Week 3 Observation. I didn't have a VCR, but I didn't need to see them to know what they held of me, drugged and broken, probably interviewed by doctors who never called me by name. I sat back on my heels, the dusty light filtering through the attic vent catching the tears I didn't realize were falling. All those years I thought I was crazy, all those nights I begged someone to believe me, and all along, it was real, it was worse than I imagined. I wasn't their daughter, I was their experiment, and now, I knew the truth, now, I knew exactly what to do. Micah's hands trembled as he held the folder. The documents were spread across the dining table, each one a dagger, consent forms, dosage logs, therapy notes. Beside them, the VHS tape labeled SC Week 3 Observation sat like a relic of a nightmare, its black plastic case cold even in the summer heat. I found the chest in the attic, I said. Under the floorboards. They hid it for a reason. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on Claudia's signature at the bottom of the consent form, inked in neat cursive beside Harris's bold scrawl. The words non-disclosure agreement and clinical trial authorization jumped off the page like screams in a quiet room. This can't be real, he whispered. It's real, I said softly. You wanted the truth. Here it is. He finally looked up. His face was pale, all the color drained from it. They sold you. Like property. They didn't see me as a daughter. Just a liability they could turn into a paycheck. Micah pushed the chair back and stood, pacing the kitchen. He raked his fingers through his hair and muttered, Jesus Christ, I had no idea. I thought she was just strict. That dad was intense, not this. Abusers don't wear warning labels, Micah. They wear wedding rings. Church clothes. They blend in. He stopped, staring at the tape. We have to tell someone. The police, the hospital board, hell, we can get a lawyer. But we need to talk to her first. She's sick, Sarah. She might not have long. She deserves a chance to, deserve? I snapped. You still think she deserves anything after this? She's still our mother. No, I cut him off. She was never a mother to me. She watched Harris hurt me and called it structure. She handed me over to strangers in lab coats and called it healing. He was quiet then. I could see the war waging inside him, love versus truth, memory versus reality. You want to talk to her? Fine, I said, backing away from the table. But I'm done with quiet. I'm done pretending this was just a bad childhood. Micah looked at me, wary. What are you going to do? I gave him a tight smile. Tell my story. That night, while Micah sat with Claudia, silent and stiff, I sat in the guest room with my laptop, uploading copies of the documents to a secure drive. I recorded myself speaking directly into the camera, my voice calm, measured. I was never mentally ill. I was chemically altered. My parents betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. And now, I'm taking back the narrative. I titled the folder My Childhood Trauma, Overcoming the Odds. The world would know what they did, and Claudia Cade would not leave this life wrapped in forgiveness. She would leave it surrounded by the truth. I used to think telling the truth would be enough. That once people heard what happened, justice would follow. But the world doesn't move for whispers, it moves for storms, and I was done whispering. The morning after I recorded my testimony, I started reaching out. I sent encrypted emails to investigative journalists, survivor support networks, and a non-profit law firm that specialized in medical malpractice. I didn't beg them to listen. I gave them facts, evidence, and my name. My real name, within hours, replies started rolling in. One journalist from Boise Weekly asked for a phone interview. A support group out of Seattle wanted to feature my story. A lawyer from Spokane requested all scanned documentation and agreed to take the case pro bono. Each connection was a spark, and soon, the fire caught. Micah watched me quietly, unsure whether to feel fear or pride. "You're really doing this," he said one evening, standing in the doorway of the guest room as I compiled folders of evidence. "She made me disappear once," I said. "I'm making sure the world sees me now." That night, I uploaded the video to a private link on YouTube, My Childhood Trauma, Overcoming the Odds. In it, I sat on my old twin bed, just as I had when I was 15, telling the truth the world never wanted to hear. "My name is Seraphine Cade," I began. "I grew up in Boise, Idaho. I was not mentally ill. I was not unstable. I was experimented on, without my consent. And with full permission from my parents." I spoke of Reedsvale, of the sedation, the gaslighting, the way my screams were rewritten as symptoms. I held up the documents, one by one. I spoke clearly, without tears. Because this wasn't a confession. It was a reckoning. I ended the video with a line I hadn't rehearsed but came from somewhere deeper than memory. "They silenced me for years. Now, I will not be quiet, not for them, not for anyone." Then, I hit upload. By the next morning, the link had been shared across several survivor forums. My inbox flooded with messages, some from strangers who believed me, others from people who had lived through their own hidden horror stories. Each message was fuel, but I still needed one more thing. "Micah," I said, pulling him aside that afternoon. "I need you to take Claudia out for a few hours. A walk, maybe. Somewhere public." He hesitated. "Why?" "Because the press is coming. And the police. And I need time to get everything in place." He studied me carefully. "You're serious?" "She was never going to face what she did," I said, "unless I forced her to." Micah sighed, rubbed the back of his neck. And finally nodded. "Fine. But if this blows up, it's on both of us." "No," I said. This was always on her. As they left for Camel's Back Park, I stood at the front window, watching them fade down the path. I wasn't nervous. For the first time in my life, I was in control, and the storm was already rolling in. By noon, the Cade farmhouse was surrounded. First came the unmarked car from the Boise Police Department, then two more with state investigators. Shortly after, a van from Channel 6 pulled into the driveway, followed by a white SUV bearing the logo of the Idaho Survivors Network. What had once been a forgotten corner of rural Boise was now the eye of a growing storm. I stood on the porch as they arrived, documents in hand, voice steady. I was no longer hiding in shadows or buried beneath someone else's narrative. This time, I was the one writing the story. Micah returned an hour later with Claudia in tow. Her eyes narrowed the moment she saw the flashing lights. "What is this?" she hissed, clutching her cardigan tight across her chest. He froze when he saw the cameras, the officers, the crowd gathering in the yard. "Sarah. What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said. Two officers stepped forward. "Claudia Cade, you are under investigation for medical negligence, fraud, and conspiracy to commit unethical experimentation on a minor. Please place your hands behind your back." Micah's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked between me and Claudia like the world had tipped sideways. "You said she was sick, Sarah, you didn't say this." "I gave you a chance to hear me," I said. "Now the world will." Claudia didn't fight the cuffs. She stood still as the steel clicked around her wrists, as the officers read her rights, as the cameras rolled. But her eyes never left mine. "You think this makes you strong," she said quietly, venom lacing every word. "You're still that little girl screaming for attention." "No," I replied. "I'm the woman who survived everything you did to her. And now, I'm the one who gets to watch you fade." They led her down the porch steps. Reporters shouted questions. Were you aware your daughter was part of clinical drug trials? Did you authorize experimental treatments? But Claudia kept her chin up, lips tight, eyes forward. Micah sank onto the porch swing, head in his hands. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear to God, I didn't know. I believe you, I said softly, sitting beside him. But you didn't want to know either. He didn't argue. The reporters turned to me now. Microphones in my face. Cameras blinking. Seraphine, do you have anything to say to other survivors? I looked into the lens. Yes. You're not crazy. You're not weak. And you're not alone. Sometimes the truth comes late. But when it arrives, it shatters everything that kept us silent. The wind picked up, tugging at the hem of my jacket. In the distance, the cruiser carrying Claudia disappeared down the gravel road, swallowed by the trees that once hid so many secrets. The Cade legacy wasn't one of honor or strength, it was a house of cards, and I had just watched it fall. It's strange, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel like a threat. 3 months have passed since the arrest, since the headlines blazed my name across every local outlet. Boise woman exposes childhood medical abuse. Since Claudia Cade's trial was set, and my inbox filled with stories from strangers who'd carried their own silence far too long. Now, I unlock the front door of Sarah's Shelf, my little bookstore tucked into the historic North End, and the only thing that greets me is the soft chime of the bell and the smell of old paper and fresh coffee. It's not much, but it's mine. Every shelf, every lamp, every note in the donation jar labeled for survivors who still need to be heard reminds me that I made it out. The walls are lined with stories. Not secrets. Some fiction, some memoirs, some survivor testimonials donated by local authors who saw my video and wanted to help amplify voices like mine. Above the counter hangs a framed photo of a sunflower growing through a cracked sidewalk. It's the only thing I took from the Cade house when it was cleared out, Claudia's old kitchen print. Funny, how something she picked for decor became a symbol of what she could never crush. I don't think about her much now, she's awaiting trial. Her lawyer tried to argue early-onset dementia, but the evidence is too loud to ignore. Her voice may have gotten soft in the end, but the paper trail screamed. Harris is just a ghost now, one I've stopped feeding with fear. Micah moved to Denver after the media frenzy died down. We talk occasionally, postcards, emails. I think he's still figuring out what was real and what was a dream someone else wrote for him. I don't blame him for that anymore, because I'm not angry the way I used to be. Not hollow either, I'm awake. Sometimes survivors ask how I stayed sane, how I clawed out of something so deep and dark. The truth? I didn't. Not at first. There were years when I was just bones and bitterness pretending to function, but then came the fire. The refusal. The moment I decided their silence wouldn't be mine anymore, I flipped the sign to open and sip my coffee as sunlight filters through the front windows. A little girl and her mom pass by, hand in hand. The girl points at a book in the window, and I see her eyes light up. That's the kind of inheritance I want to leave behind. Not pain, not silence, but light. I may never fully outrun the shadows of my past. But I've built something brighter in their place. And I've written my own ending, because in the ruins of betrayal, I found something sacred, my voice, and this time. No one gets to take it away. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power of truth, survival, and reclaiming your voice, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life inspired stories of strength and redemption. We want to hear from you. Have you ever had to overcome betrayal or speak out against silence? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts, your journey, or simply your support. You never know who your words might help. Your voice matters. Let it be heard.